So in our collective memory, the Tanakh is abundant with violent stories of war and conquest presented or executed mainly by men. In these stories, the role of women is often marginal, and they are mainly presented as victims. And as I will show later, it's not a one-off victim because men get killed. But women get violated, to use a nice word, but they're actually raped, and they move from one man to the other, and thank you so much. Thank you. Everybody knows how I use it. Okay, so in this presentation, we'll engage in a gender and feminist reading of the biblical, have I done something, Will? Of the biblical stories of deadly female protagonists that kill their enemy's hero. And I want to mainly focus on the story of Yael, killing of Sisera. And I'm sure you are all very familiar with the story, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the background. But what I would like to do today is talk about the story of Yael from a perspective of women's fate in times of war, specifically in the Tanakh, but also in antiquity. Is that working? I should click. Okay, Will click, please. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so basically I'm going to go, those are the things that I will be presenting. So looking at women's place and status in the Tanakh, the prose version of Yael's action in Judges chapter 4, the poetic version in Judges chapter 5, and I already now want to state that we think there are two independent versions that later on were brought together, and the respective message that they hold. So if we have time, we'll look at other warrior women, but I don't think we'll have time. So what does it mean to be a woman in the, should I stand here, Will? What does it mean to be a woman in the ancient world, and more specifically in times of war? So as an opening statement, I want to say that it's not in the interest of the biblical narrator or biblical narrators to discuss the place and status of women. I'm going to be a little bit politically here, sorry, but 50 years ago, and maybe we didn't consider the other, like the black person's view. We weren't interested in that as a whole. So a similar situation happens to women's place in the Tanakh. As I said, women play a marginal role, and the stories are usually from a man's perspective. Nonetheless, we have a few narratives of women protagonists, or at least those narratives are portrayed from a women's perspective. So the first thing that I wanted to discuss, that in patriarchal societies, women are considered the, how should I say it, the owed by men. Okay, I'm trying to use, and they present men's honor. And by either violating or the women, you actually violate the men's honor. And I think that the best example, sorry, Will again, is the story of Avshalom, King David's favorite son, that when he goes against King David, he wants to take the kingdom, he sleeps with his women or concubines in sight of all Israel. So by violating King David's women, he's actually violating David's honor. So that's a common perspective in the ancient world. Now, in time of war, the place of women is even worse. So women are not only relegated to holding a marginal role, but as I said, they are the ultimate victims because men are killed, but women continue to be violated. It's not going to work. Okay, so I'm just giving you a few verses from the book of Dvarim or Deuteronomy. It's the war law. And it says that when you go to battle and you see, and you capture a beautiful woman and you desire her and you will take her to be your wife. Now in the Hebrew it actually says, Velakachta lecha leisha. Because there's no dowry mentioned, she's actually not a proper wife. So we think she's a concubine. And we'll look at the rest of the law soon, which is important. But what we think that this book was, scholars almost completely, or all of them agree that it was written in around the 7th century BCE. And it's a time where Israel is actually occupied by foreign forces. So the Babylonians, the Assyrians, and everything that you say about the war rule, which suggests that the captive woman is the enemy of Israel. It's actually Israel because they are the ones who are under occupation. Okay, so I want to just continue.
Can I ask you, first of all, if they wanted to say concubine, they would have said another. I mean, Isha has a particular meaning in the Bible, so why do you think it's a concubine?
No, it's really, sorry, I'm just going to not, you can't, you've got to go when you read the Tanakh, you've got to take off your modern glasses and go back to the Tanakh.
No,
and
we have a word for concubines, pilegesh.
yeah, but it's also Isha. You've got them both. So it's Isha is not, because there's no dowry mentioned here, we think it's not a wife that was bought. Okay?
And only wives that were bought could be wives? I mean,
Yeah, because that's legitimate. Here it's not legitimate. He's taken her as a wife, but not as the official wife, because he hasn't paid for her. So she's part of his booty.
but is only the way to have a wife is to be purchased?
Yes.
That's the only way to get a wife?
Well, yes, or legally. But I just want to continue. Otherwise, we'll just get into a whole lot of questions. Yes,
Yeah,
a quick
no,
one.
I just wanted to continue because obviously we know that like Hagar, who was a more or less a pilegesh, is called
Yeah.
Isha, so that's an example.
Okay.
Of one. But in this specific case, I would only a little bit agree because it uses the word velakachta.
Okay.
So, and we learn, like we say kicha, like because it says lakachat is to acquire something.
Yeah, but there's no dowry. But I'm going to continue. Okay. Okay. So in war, in time of war, we also have some rules again in Bamidbar in Numbers that says that actually there's a difference between captive men and captive women. And here, as you can see, you kill the men, you kill every woman who has known a man, so she's not a virgin. But the women who are virgins, you keep alive. And the question is, what are you going to do with them whilst they're alive? And again, in Deuteronomy, we have the status of women that they are at the same status as cattle in times of war. So, yes. So, but the woman and the little ones and the cat and all that is in the city, even the spoils thereof shall thou take for prey unto yourself. So, this is the background that I want to look at Yael's stories. Okay, so as I stated earlier, there are two versions of the story of Yael, one the prose version, one the poetry version. And we think that they are two separate. There is a relationship between those two texts, and I will talk about it in a minute. But they reflect a different source. And I want to start first with the prose in chapter 4. Okay, so that's the prose in chapter 4. That's the beginning. And as you can see, this is a map of where the war between the Israelites and the Canaanites, and that's really important, took place. So it's in Haroshet Goim, which is in the north part of Israel. And you can see up here, Kadesh Naphtali is the city of Barak ben Avinoam, who is with Dvorah in this battle. And the war is between Yavin, the king of Canaan, and the Israelites. Now, when we jump down to verse 16, we see that Barak pursues after the chariots of Sisera, and this is the background of how Sisera gets to Yael's tent. Okay, so we can continue. Okay, so now I'm actually going to very slowly look at the verses. Okay. And Sisera fled on his legs to the tent of Yael, the woman of Heber the Kenite, for there was peace between Yavin, the king of Hatzor, and the house of Heber the Kenite. So the Kenites are known as allies of Israel. We know of Moses, who married Tzipporah, and she was of the Kenite, and they are known as the allies of Israel. Two things. First of all, the Kenites usually live down south. So what are they doing up here in the north? We don't know. Secondly, why is Sisera running away? So on the one hand, okay, so sorry, I'm jumping ahead. I'm going to go a bit back. So Yael, the woman of Heber the Kenite, we don't know if Heber was her husband, like Dvorah Eshet Lapidot. We don't know whether she was his wife or of his clan. So as you will see throughout this presentation, I'm going to ask a whole lot of questions that will remain open because we don't have all the answers. So she runs to there. Okay, so and the other thing, we don't know how the Kenites, how he moved from down south to up north. He's in the heart of the land of Israel. We don't know exactly the position or the alliance of this tribe. And I'm just going to read in verse 11. I haven't got it, but I'm just going to read it. Now Heber the Kenite had separated himself from the Kenites, even from the children of Chovav, the brother-in-law of Moses, and had pitched his tent as far as the oak in Sanaim, which is by Kadesh. Now, Kadesh is not the southern Kadesh Barnea, but the northern Kadesh Naphtali, so we know where he is. Okay, so in verse 17, we hear that there is peace between Yavin and king of Hatzor and the house of Heber, but peace is not what we think of peace as today, but peace in this context is that there are his allies. And allies must join the force of the main warrior lord. So that's the type of peace between the two. Okay, so, and then we see Sisera has come to Yael's tent, and she goes out towards him and said to him, "Turn in, my lord, turn to me, fear not." And he turned into her tent, and she covered him with a rug. Okay, it is most uncommon for women in the ancient East to go, and in the Tanakh, to go and welcome a man. Only men can greet other men. Only men can welcome other men into their area, into their tent. So when Yael is going out to him, it's very, very, very unusual. And also, when she calls him to come into her tent, it's almost a seductive element or step, because why is a woman asking a stranger man, not of her household, to come into her house? So she comes. So we don't know why she does it, but she still asks him to come in, and she covers him with a rug, and you see it's quite a feminine or a motherly action. I mean, he's the big hero. Sisera is the big hero. Why is she covering him? And then he tells her, he commands her to give him some water because he's thirsty. He's run away from the battle. And she gives him milk. And again, she covers him. And the Tanakh is very, very limited in repeating things, in talking about feelings. And whenever there's a feeling mentioned or something appears more than once, it's always very, very meaningful. Yes, I can see you're dying to ask a question.
No, I know that. I'm just like wondering here, because you mentioned that it would be very uncharacteristic in the ancient Near East for this to happen. But as far as the Tanakh as a text goes, doesn't this seem like quite a common scene like we see in all the betrothal scenes? It's like the exact same thing. Like someone comes, they're thirsty, and then the woman invites him into the house, like we see with Yaakov.
Okay, I'm going to stop you here, sorry, because they are not married women. Yael
she's married?
is Eshet Chever Akini. We
Might
don't
be her
know,
father,
but
her
we
class.
think, I know, we don't know. But if you remember the story of the angels coming to tell Abraham that he will have a son, he goes out and calls Sarah from the tent. So women's place is in the tent. You can't go and greet a man, okay? So she greets him, and also in the Tanakh, food is, and milk, food is considered as a seductive element, as almost a sexual element. Because the Tanakh is very polite. You'll hear it doesn't use a lot of words that are not appropriate, okay? So that's what she's doing. And again, there's this uncertainty. Why is Sisera running to Yael's place? Are the Kenites allies or foes of Israel? It's all very unclear.
Is there any other place that an adult drinks milk that we have in these stories?
No, not that I can think of. But
it's very odd. I mean, first of all, I thought people were lactose intolerant. Milk was
you leave this out. You have to leave it out. Because, because you're moving. I'm just now looking at the text, and you can't look at other
I
things.
understand, but if this is a unique situation in which the only adult drinking milk, that has to be symbolic of something.
It's exactly what I said. He's the hero. She's a womanly, a feminine, and it's a seductive element. Okay, giving food, giving milk, because where does milk come? Milk comes from the domain of the feminine, either women or animal. Okay, so it's all there somewhere, and then he commands her. So on the one hand, he comes and he asks us for milk. For water, which indicates that he's weak, he's tired. But then he commands her to stand in the entrance of the tent, and if any man comes to inquire where he is, you should tell him that he's not there. And now I just want to go quickly into the Hebrew. Whoever can, do you want me to read it, or can you read it yourself, or you've read the English? But what's really, really interesting, and will show you, the amod, I've got stand in English, but English hasn't got feminine and masculine conjugations. And he says to her, amod. Amod is masculine singular. So why is he talking to a woman approaching her as a man? So there's we've got a few suggestions. A, we don't know. Okay, that's always easy to say. B, he's a military commander, so he's used to talking to men. But veshe alech, this, and he will ask you. Here, it's a feminine form. So again, we don't know. And as I said, I've got a lot of questions, and I don't have all the answers. Yes, Natalie.
I just wanted to point out that it says nas love, and the Lego is like penis, right? It's a euphemism for penis in the Tanakh. I don't want to go there. But
Okay, I am going there, but give me a minute, okay? I wasn't going into the penis part, but I am going there, okay? So it's very important to say that he fled on his legs, and some of the translations which I've changed. Some of the translations which I've changed said feet, because maybe that's the proper English, but I've kept it to legs because you'll see in a minute. Yes?
Could you maybe say also with the amod that because the task that she's being tasked with at this point is almost like a military task, like stand guard, make sure, and lie for me, protect me, it seems as if Sisera is almost giving her like a very masculine task. He's
Absolutely.
And that's why he's maybe using the imperative.
Or yes, but can you see the difference between him coming, fleeing from his enemies, the Israelites, and telling her that he needs to be looked after, and she says to him, and I haven't read, and she said unto him twice, "Turn in, my Lord, turn in to me, do not be afraid." So she's comforting him, she's comforting this hero, and all of us, and he's asking for water, and then he commands her to stand in front of the tent. So we have this twofold or double meaning. I don't know how to exactly. It's just a question that will remain open. Okay, I think we can continue. Sorry. Another thing, it's a time of war. Where are the men? Are they not supposed to be there to protect their women? So we have a couple of options. Maybe they have gone and joined the Canaanites, Yavin. Then it makes sense that Sisera runs to Yael because she's part of the group of his allies. But where are the men? I mean, women should be, at that time, should be protected, should not be left alone in time of war.
She's in disguise as a man.
Okay, I think there's limits. Okay, so I spoke about the fact that women do not initiate the first move, and I've spoken about the amod, and this is basically the story in Judges 17 to 20, but then in verses 21 and 22, we have further questions, and we'll just read the whole English. Does someone else want to read? Because my voice is...
Would you like it in the English or Hebrew?
No, do the English, unless people know the Hebrew. Let's do the English,
Then
be
Yael,
nice.
the woman of Chereb, took a tent pin and
Okay,
put the hammer
tent pin is important. Okay, continue.
and put the hammer in her hand.
Important.
And went softly unto him, and smote the pin into his temple, and it landed to the ground, for he was in a deep sleep. So he swooned and died. And behold, Barak pursues Sisera, and Yael came out to meet him, and said to him, Come, and I will show you the man whom you seek. And he came unto her, and behold, Sisera lay dead, and the tent pin in his temple.
Okay, so first of all, if I could look at the tent pin and hammer. Doesn't want to stay. These are household utensils. They are not utensils of war. They're not a sword. So actually, Yael not only kills Sisera, but she kills him with what a woman has. So I think this is very, very important. But we have to ask the question, previously she invited him in, she gave him water, she covered him. Why is she killing him all of a sudden? Is he an ally or a foe? You know, we really don't know. Now she kills him, it says in his temple, but actually we are not sure that it's in temple. It could be his throat. I won't go into other places in the Tanakh that has those words, but it's somewhere in his head. So again, is she chopping off his masculine gear? Because usually you kill someone in the heart, I think. Last time I did it. Okay, so that's it. And then not only has she welcomed Sisera into her home, she's now welcoming another man who is a stranger. Now, is Barak, is he a foe or an enemy? We are really, really confused. We don't know, because he's an Israelite, and Sisera was supposed to, the Canaanites were supposed to be with Yavin and Sisera. So this is all quite surprising. And now, thanks, Will, I just want, okay, so Vatitznach ba'aretz. Okay, so Vatitznach, which is landed, but in Hebrew, it's feminine singular. And we do not know from the context of the Hebrew what has landed. Is it the yated, the tent pin, which is feminine singular, which it could be that the tent pin has fallen, landed, or is it Yael? You know, she worked quite hard, killing someone, you know, with a hammer or with a tent pin. So was she, so did she fall down? No, he can't. Vehu nirdam vaya'af vayamot. So, yeah, so it's not, he could have not died. But if we go down to verse 22, and I'm looking, Will, at Vayavo elea. Vayavo elea is a totally sexual connotation in the Tanakh. You cannot get away from it. And I've got a few examples of, I can't find it, but David, we know about David when he comes to Bathsheba, Vayavo elea. And I've counted about 11 places at least.
She gets pregnant.
Yes, so, but there's 11 places where specifically we know that Vayavo elea means sexual intercourse. So what is happening between Barak and Yael? I have to ask you. You know, we are sticking to the text, so we don't know.
When you stick to the text, it's not giving you a time frame either exactly. Is there an exact time frame of when the thing is happening? Now, Sisera's dead, Barak comes. How much later does Barak come?
Okay, and also he died before, in verse 21. So, you know, there's a lot of gaps. Okay, so if I just try, and I think, we can do the next one. Is it the summary? Okay, so the summary, yes. So does Hever refer to the Kenite men or to the Kenite clan? So I'm just going to ask you a lot of questions. Where are Hever's men? Have they joined Sisera's army? We don't know. Are they with the Israelites because they are residing within the Israelites? Why is Sisera fleeing into Israelite territory rather than towards his own base? Okay? We don't know. What are Yael's motives? Okay, I've got stage. That's wonderful. Inviting a it's a typo, a strange man into her tent and assuring him not to fear her, offering him milk when he only asked for water. Again, it's a seductive move. Why is she covering him? What's going on? The big hero. And then, why is she killing him? What made her change her mind? So we don't know all of those questions. But now we are moving to Judges chapter 5, which is part of the Song of Dvorah. And I want you to forget everything that we've done so far, okay? So we're starting from a clean slate, and we're going to look at this text on its own. So you probably know Dvorah, of course, the judge is the fourth judge, and there's a cycle of the Israelites sin. God brings a judge, he saves them, Dvorah. So she saves them. The land is, is peaceful for 40 years, and then they sin again, and this cycle goes on and on. So this is Dvorah singing, very important, and maybe later on we'll talk about the the fact that in the Tanakh, women sing, and sorry, I'm again being political. Men listen to women singing, and this is okay. Okay, so Dvorah says that Yael is to be blessed above all women. Okay, so she's really glorifying Yael. Water he asked, milk she gave, in a lordy dish she brought forward butter. So in this version, not only milk is she offering, but butter in a huge dish. And her hand to the 10 pin she put, and her right hand to the workman's hammer, and she smote Sisera. She smote through his head, and she pierced and struck through his temple. Okay, and then between her legs, do you remember the legs before that Sisera ran away on his legs? From between her legs, he bowed, he fell, he lay between her legs again. He bowed, he fell. Where he bowed, there he fell dead. And we have to ask, what is it between her legs? I mean, this is, first of all, how, if he was, where was, you know, if we try and present a scene, if we try and make a movie of it, where is Sisera positioned? So she smooths his head, we think, and he falls down, and all of a sudden he's between her legs. So, you know, and again, this is a very sexual toning, and it says it twice. So again, we have this, and I don't have an explanation. I'm just raising questions about the text. So, yeah, I think this is important. Okay, so if I continue with the reading, and now something totally different comes along in verses 28, and we're just going to look slowly at those verses. And here we've got a totally new protagonist that we have not heard about before, and this is the mother of Sisera, who's looking through the lettuce, and in a minute I will show you an archaeological, I'll show you because I don't want to mess up. No, I won't mess up with the slides. We found tablets of actually depicting women from the 8th century BCE from this area looking through a window. And we also have instances, we know that when David came back from the killing Goliath, and he comes, no, from bringing the ark back to Jerusalem, sorry. Michal is looking through the tent, through the window. Jezebel is looking through the window before she gets killed. Okay, now the Sisera's mother has a lading. She has wise ladies. Who has wise ladies or ladies in waiting in the Tanakh? Queens. So, if she is a queen, and I'm asking, what does it make Sisera? Makes him a king. Do we hear of Yavin? No Yavin, king of Canaan. And if I go further to verse, where is it? Verse 14, which I don't have, it actually says that they are fighting the Amalekites. So we have a different enemy. And I just want to say in brackets that the Amalekites are not known at all from external sources. All the other peoples who lived in Canaan, and we don't know whether Canaan was a general name or there were different groups or tribes or clans, but the Amalekites, who are very important in the Tanakh, don't have any external, we don't hear about them from any external sources, and some biblical scholars, and I won't go into it, actually think that the Tanakh made this group up because it suited their needs. So her wise ladies answered her, and she too returned answer to herself, and she says, and this is important, have they not found, have they not divided the spoils? So what is actually doing? Who's saying those verses? Who's saying those verses?
Dvorah is saying it.
Dvorah is saying it. Now, is Dvorah there? Can Dvorah see Sisera's mother? So it's an imaginative scenario.
She's the narrator. She's made Sisera's mother into a narrator who
Okay.
doesn't actually exist in the story.
So it's an imaginative, well, you don't know. It's a
No,
different
she-
context.
I understand that, but
Okay, but it's
we
what...
need the prose beforehand, even though the poetic
No,
prose
no,
is
wait,
separate. I know
wait.
You always forget, but you don't have because we don't have the beginning part of the story in the poem.
Give me a minute. So it's an imaginative scenario, and you'll see that Dvorah is actually mocking the enemy because she says, so Sisera's mother says, have they not divided the spoils? So who are the spoils? The women of, but which, or the women of what?
The spoils of war. The
Yeah, but in this scenario, they are
Oh, the Israelites.
they are the Israelites, but we actually know who won the war. The Israelites. So the women who are being victimized are actually not the Israelite women, they are the Amalekite women, or the women of Sisera's mother group. So there's, so she's mocking her. And a damsel to every man. A damsel, I don't like, maybe we'll show the Hebrew, because this is, Racham Rachmatayim, it's the only time in the, it's the only time in the Tanakh that this expression appears. It's actually a virgin, and there's if you look at that, Racham is the same group as Rechem, which is a womb. So what happens? A virgin, one virgin or two virgin women to each man. So he can take whoever he wants. And then...
says Lerosh Gever.
Yeah.
Had to single out each man, and Sisera is killed to that.
You can continue.
Yeah, you can analyze this
Okay,
stuff.
no, I'm
Some
happy.
summaries that.
Okay, to Sisera, a spoil of dyed garments. Okay, so the dyed garments is the beautiful wear of the enemy's people, but who are going to wear those beautiful garments? Not Sisera, but the women. So they bring it as a war booty to their own women. So to Sisera, a spoil of dyed garments, embroidered. And then she says, Shalal tzvaim rikma, tzeva rikmatayim, letzavare shalal. So all this booty is going to, if we look at from Sisera's point of view, or Sisera's mother's point of view, it's going to be brought to her and her ladies. But because we know that eventually they lose the war, it's actually Dvorah mocking her, because it's exactly the opposite. And then we have the ending of the poem or the song is a formulatic ending, which says that, I don't have it in Hebrew, in English, but all your enemies, God, and all the people who love you will win, and the land will be peaceful for 40 years. Okay, so if in the previous time, in the prose, we heard that Yael tells Yael tells Yavin that Sisera is dead. Here we don't have all this. Barak, all those names. Yael tells Barak, the Israelite, that Sisera is dead, but here we have a different ending. So to summarize that, I think, Okay, so I just got yes. Okay, so this is what we found, which is from the 8th century BCE, and there's a few more, looking at a woman.
Where is this discovered?
In Syria. I can find, I can give you the exact place where it is found, but, it's exactly depicted. So whilst Dvorah might be imagining what's happening with Sisera's mother, the depiction of a woman standing and looking through the window is very genuine, as we can see. And I've just got another picture of Yael killing by Gustave Doré. Is that how you pronounce his name in English? He's got a lot of his pictures are of biblical imaginary. Okay, and I think you can't see his head, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay, so let's go to the conclusion. How am I going with? Okay, how am I going with time? So again, we have a whole lot of questions. Is Haver a Kenite man or a clan? Where are Haver's men? Again, we have it here. Why is Sisera fleeing to Yael? But then we have more questions. What are Yael's motives? Firstly, in accepting a strange man into her tent, offering him milk and butter. Notice the butter is an element. When he only asked for water. And why is she killing him? What made her change her mind? Maybe, okay, and more. Okay, what is the relationship between them? As the narrative twice employs the highly sexual expression ben raglea, between her legs. And what do we learn of the predicament of the enemy's captive virgin woman in time of war? Not a good predicament. And all those questions so now I'm going, before I go into that, now I'm going into the similarities between the two versions. Now, we usually think that a song or a poem version is earlier than a prose version. And you can see it in the Iliad and also somewhere else. Where did I write it? And also in Beowulf, which is one of the first English literary. So let's look at the similarities. So Yael is a woman of Hever the Kenite in both texts, and she is, Sisera requests water, and she kills him with the household utensils, and there's a strong sexual tone in the wording. So those are the similarities. Now let's look at the differences. And I've got them both, both chapters. So in chapter 4, in the prose, the enemy is the Kenites, and in chapter 5, it's the Amalekites. In 4, Yavin is the king of Chatzor, and Sisera is his general. But we think that in chapter 5, maybe Sisera is a king. We don't know in the poem. In the prose, Barak chases Sisera, and Yael advises him of the killing. In chapter 5, in the poem, in chapter 5, there's no mention of Barak. And then Sisera approaches Yael also in chapter 5. Again, Sisera commands Yael to guard. In the prose, there's nothing in the poem. And in chapter 4, we have that God subdues Yavin, but in chapter 5, we have a formulaic ending. Okay, so it's again a difference between the two versions. So, okay, so again, I just want to give you a few more differences between the two. It looks as though the prose version actually tries to fill in the gaps in the poetry version, which, whether they do a good job or not, because we saw there's still many questions. So the prose, he explains how Sisera came to Yael's tent, which we didn't have before. It softens Yael's image by making her less violent and more feminine. So she covers Sisera. She's less seductive. She only offers milk, while in the poetry she offers milk and butter. In the prose, Sisera commands Yael to stand guard at the tent's entrance, which is not in the prose. And chasing Barak, Sisera arrives at Yael's tent and she shows him that she's slain him. Another important difference is with the wording. So if in the song we say in Hebrew, Maim sha'al chalav natna, water he asked, milk water he asked, milk she gave. In the prose, he says to her, please give me some water. So there's also, a more polite version. And again, she only gives him the milk and she covers him. So you see in the prose, Yael's configuration or depiction is less warrior-like, less seductive-like, more feminine, more womanly. And the most important thing that in the prose section, the whole scene of Sisera's mother is omitted, including the fate of women in time of war. And also Yavin's fall and the Israelites' victory is totally God's doing. So those are the differences. So just to summarize really quickly, in the Tanakh and in antiquity more generally, women's role is often marginal. Moreover, in times of war, women are always victims. And we know the women of, I don't know how you say it in English, but the women of Shiloh, of Pilegesh Bagiv'ah, like
The concubine in Gibeon.
Okay, so in Judges 19, so again, women are, the spoils of war. And really, the only power women have in time of war is seduction. And we see this seduction also, it's not time of war, but we see the story of Tamar seduces Yehuda. And this whole story, just let me finish and then. Now, in our story, the women are strong, and they are the one who leading the narrative. So Dvorah, who's in the background, and Yael, and they are the real heroines. And while the men, both Sisera and Barak, are really weak, because Sisera gets killed by a woman, but Barak would not go originally into war unless Dvorah came with him. The killing with household utensils, it's a woman's thing, it's not a man's thing. And also, Yael is not the only warrior or combatant woman in the Tanakh. We have the woman of Tevet, who saves her people by throwing the stone at the people. We have the story of Delilah. Now, the story of Delilah is really interesting because Yael is a noble woman. She's a heroine because she killed the Israelites' enemies. But Delilah, in a sense, does the same. She causes Samson or Shimshon to die, but Shimshon is our man. He's our hero, so she's evil. But it's almost a mirror story. So if I end up by asking a question, is there a place for gender and feminist reading of the Tanakh? As I said in the beginning, I believe that the narrator of the Tanakh, which is, or are men, they're not really interested in women's perspective. So I think, we've got a place to read the Tanakh in a more modern reading. And I just want to give the most common example is of the Akedat Yitzchak, the sacrifice of Yitzchak, that we don't know anything about Sarah. He's the only son. Abraham takes him, and she's not there. And if you look at modern Hebrew poetry, we have so many beautiful, beautiful poems that actually take the position of Sarah or of Yitzchak. Okay, so as you can see, I've raised more questions than I've given answers. And my personal, mission in life, and that's again political, is to say that Tanakh belongs to all of us, whether we are Jews or non-Jews, whether we are religious Jews or non-religious Jews. I'm not religious, but I live with the Tanakh. My Tanakh is over there. I read it. It's ours, and we need to know it. We need to make sense of it. And I think I will finish now if you have questions. Otherwise. Yes, I know there's some questions. Now the attack comes.
It's not an attack. You came here, a friendly face. And it's like, really good. No, it's very, very interesting. My question just is because, I know you even said your objective is not to give answers but more to raise questions. I feel that, meaning, when we're reading through it, on the one hand, pointing out things like the seductive nature of Yael and the like, it's almost as if you're maybe suggesting that as far as the Tanakh's narrator goes, the only way in which a woman can be a hero is by using these sort of seductive things, which I guess is this sort of implicit chauvinism in there. That's one aspect. But then on the other hand, we have to appreciate, which you just mentioned at the end, that's why I kind of put my hand down, but if you look at the entire context of the story, we're in the story of Dvorah. So at the end of the day, the whole context of the story isn't a woman doing something subversive and seductive. It's actually the opposite. She's filling the place of a man, meaning whoever is, whatever your beliefs are on who the author of this is, it's clear that it's at a time where the Israelite people living in the land can imagine a text in which a woman is not only a hero, but also the leader of the Jewish people. Right, where she is, heading the war campaign. Like you said, Barak didn't want to go to war originally. Dvorah wants to go to war. So how do you resolve, on the one hand, the portrayal of Yael, which may suggest that the only way in which a woman can be a heroine is in this sort of, very subversive, seductive, womanly way, the yated and everything like that. But on the other hand, the person doing like the regular stuff, like the going into battle and rallying the troops and the like, that's also a woman. Do you think, basically,
I think I get it.
And also, meaning, are Dvorah and Yael representing the same thing or something completely different?
Okay, so first of all, I want to say that when you read the Tanakh, you have to stick to the text. And before I do, part of my critical analysis is taking off my modern glasses, so to speak, and trying to read it from their perspective. Now, we know with prophecies that we think that the prophecies that we can most believe that actually the prophet prophesied is prophecies that did not eventually come true. And we've got a few from Jeremiah because that shows that the people knew about it, and the redactors of the text had to put it in. And I've got a lot of examples about Jesus. I like the New Testament as well. So everything that's negative is usually correct. Now, so we have to look at the Tanakh from their perspective. But on the other hand, did women have a stronger, at the time, did women have a stronger role? Which we can see it in the woman from Tevet, in Dvorah and Yael, and a later redactor, or redactors have put them, because it was a known story. They could not ignore it. So, I can open a whole question about the place of women at the time, and we don't know. We know that women sang. There's a lot of things. So, in a long way, I think I'm trying to answer your question by saying that maybe there were places or there were instances where there was a place for women in the Tanakh, but later on they...
non-subversive.
Yeah.
Normal...
I don't think she's even subversive. In the time, that was the only power women had. She couldn't do anything.
But that's not how Dvorah is portrayed. That's only Yael.
Nachon.
Dvorah is a normal, regular leader in this story.
Yes. I was going to say something, but I forgot about it. No.
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you.
Yes, sorry.
It's been a while since I looked at the book of Dvorah.
Okay.
Years, but I do remember
Do it now.
when was it Barak or whoever it was, when he was saying that he didn't want to go to war without Dvorah, and then Dvorah tells him that that's fine and we'll win, but because basically you've been a coward, God will pretty much punish you by giving the victory to a woman.
Absolutely.
So in a way, it's sort of like the idea of the woman having power is actually just used to be an insult towards the men.
Again, we're talking about power. And if you read the poem of the Song of Dvorah, we look at that as one text now, but there's, it's fragmented. Yeah. And we don't know how, it was passed orally and whether later redactors put it together. There's so many, unanswered questions. But what to me is amazing is that we have a text that's, 2,000, 3,000 years old, And it's so applicable to us today. And I just have to tell you that there's an Iranian woman, a journalist, I can't remember her name, wrote the book, The Beekeeper of, a place in Turkey, in Iran, The Beekeeper of Sinjar. And she interviewed Yazidi women who were taken as captive by ISIS or Daesh, and they tell about how they were raped by the first person who bought them, and then they've been bought by other men like 10 times. And just when I was looking at that, I thought, oh my goodness, nothing has changed. And we are lucky to be born here and now. Thank you very much.